Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth weekly astrology overview for week commencing the 20th of May. Shortly, I'm going to share with you the event chart for this week, which provides a lot of information about how this week will start to unfold. But just to say, in terms of the big picture, the Sun, Venus and Jupiter are all travelling into the quick-witted Gemini, and in the case of Venus and Jupiter, arcing towards Pluto in Aquarius for the first time in 220 years. So it's really powerful stuff. Please stay with me. I will then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon, and share each of the event charts for those signs too. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. Now, I've been sharing recently that 45% of people who enjoy my videos are not subscribers. If that's you, please help to grow the channel and click or tap on the bell notification symbol as well as subscribing. Every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. And if you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please click on the link beneath this video or go to www.patrickarundell.com/subscribe. I've been writing these for near to 30 years. I also provide the overview of each day from an astrological viewpoint and the most dominating influence. That means we get to see the big picture, but also enjoy our personal zodiac sign too. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these as they come in. See what people have found working with me. Also, if you'd like to ascend above zodiac astrology and really get gripped by the excitement of natal astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data, I can provide for you your life roadmap report. This will help you to get a much more intimate understanding of the patterns that have played out in your life so far. In my special package, you can also get your 12 months transits, the moving planets in the sky interacting with your totally unique planetary blueprint. Please see the link below for more. But if you know your tropical astrology, why not check out my draconic reports, also 30% off. And this helps you to understand your soul or karmic energy that you brought into this world. It's a fascinating subject. I'm going to put a link beneath this video to my blog so you can read more about draconic, but also see how my charts vary through natal and draconic. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. There's lots of exciting things to tell you about. We have a collective in the sign of Taurus. Of course, Uranus has been there full time since 2019 and has been a very disruptive influence. But we have also got the ruler of the sign of Taurus, Venus, very close to Jupiter. Now, these 2 planets are the planets of fortune. In traditional astrology, Venus is known as the lesser and Jupiter the greater benefics. But having them in the sign of money, but also possessions, earthy sensual possessions, is delicious. But they're both very close to the Sun, which is on the anaretic point, the last degree of the sign of Taurus, preparing to move into Gemini on Tuesday. I hope that we're all collectively going to get some kind of relief from the punishing time that many of us have had over the last 2.5 years in terms of our collective finances. So many things have gone up. It's just there is a cautionary note, because as much as we could enjoy a slice of fortune or enjoy some creature comforts and good food and good wine and generosity of spirit, Mercury is being afflicted in Taurus by Pluto. Pluto's in the part of our overall collective chart, which is very much to do with our future, but also our higher ideals. And it's possible we may encounter someone who doesn't get the potential for generosity that comes through not just that collective of Venus, Jupiter and the Sun, but the fact that they're linking back to Neptune. Neptune and Jupiter are the two co-regents of the sign of Pisces. Pisces is very much about spirituality. So whatever comes to us this week, we can actually approach things in different ways. We can enjoy things in an earthy, material sense, or enjoy good food or good wine, very Taurian, or we can also do something for someone who is less fortunate, very Piscean. So the spiritual dimension of our approach to money, resources and our values is definitely emphasized at the start of this week. But Mercury clashing with Pluto suggests there could be a strident conversation with someone who's not seeing this. It could be a mean-spirited boss or a line manager, or someone we encounter online who's determined to make sure that their opinion and their dogma and their values overpower anyone else's particular viewpoint. But also, if we look at the sign of Aries, Mars, the ruler, is so close to the North Node. It's truly exciting. The North Node has been in the sign of Aries, the true North Node, since the middle of July 2023. We'll be there through to the 11th of January 2025. But the combination of these two is interesting. Mars in Aries asks us to take action quickly, but because the North Node is the point of destiny for us all collectively, and very much to do with our instincts, whether it's to do with travel, whether it's to do with fashion, colours, food, anything, even music. The North Node tends to pick up on what we're all being pulled towards. So putting Mars in the mix as well can give us a lot of empowerment. So if there's something that really feels exciting to you and you want to take action, this is a lot of confirmational energy to go for it. Now on Tuesday, the Sun is going to be returning to Gemini for the first time in 11 months. Now it is going to link up with Pluto, but it did do this last year because if you recall, Pluto moved from the 27th of March through to the 11th of June last year through the sign of Aquarius. So we did have that trine occur last time. This is 120 degrees, but Pluto and the Sun in a positive angle can help us transform something. This could be inside ourselves, it could be in terms of our environment, our physical world, but both are in signs of personal expression. In terms of the Sun back in Gemini, things can speed up. This is quick, fast communications, but also there's a sense of fun and mischief here as well. Pluto in Aquarius is in its retrograde. It's asking us to think very deeply about our future direction, but also about our higher values. But there could be a very important conversation that plays out before this week comes to a close. But also on Thursday, Venus plays catch up with the Sun, joining Gemini. Here Venus can be very flirtatious, very coquettish, but it also links with Pluto exactly by Saturday. But later on Thursday we have a full moon in the sign of Sagittarius. So the moon is facing the Sun, they're not integrated like a new moon, so therefore there is the potential for some tension. But Pluto is influencing both the position of the Sun and the moon in a very constructive way. Because the sign of Sagittarius is very much about big ideas, philosophy, history, the rule of law, and can be very noble, the moon here does like to be free. Both are mutable signs, which helps to ease the energy of this full moon. It can be more fluid, but the Sun and Venus in Gemini are wanting to have quick, fast, perhaps flirty conversations, and the moon's just saying, look, what is behind our expression, what is behind these interactions? And with Pluto feeding in, yes, that brings a more weighty, substantive energy to bear. But by Saturday, Jupiter moves back to Gemini for the first time in 12 years. It's going to be here through to the 9th of June 2025. Technically debilitated in the sign of Gemini. So interesting with the full moon occurring at the same time. So we do have some tension between the need to think big and to embrace higher truths, very much a Sagittarian concept, with that quick moving and very playful and very socially interactive Gemini energy. But Jupiter is going to link to Pluto as well, but that's going to happen exactly on the 3rd of June. But we're certainly going to feel the energy. And just like Venus, Jupiter is linking to Pluto for the first time in over 220 years. Now, Venus may be about communication in terms of relationships, but it's also about money. And because Pluto's really asking us to reset our whole perspective, there could be some very significant changes that we start to observe in the wider world, particularly around the media, which is what Gemini governs. But Jupiter is asking, in its connection to Pluto, for us to have a significant reset. And if you're fortunate enough to have any planetary influences right at the start of the 3 air signs, which is Gemini, Libra and Aquarius, this can be a particularly auspicious start to the week. Also, if you've got planets or positions at the start of each of the fire signs, that can also be very exciting too. So this is a week when we have an opportunity to really try to understand what communications really mean. That's the Sagittarius energy coming through the full moon, but also through the depth of Pluto, which asks us to analyse and quarry down to what's really meaningful, but also because Jupiter's moving into Gemini. So it's asking us to not just chat, have fun and mix and mingle. What's the meaning behind it? And that's the energy that's going to be playing out by the time this week draws to a close. So it's interesting in the early parts of this week, we're really much more focused on the material side of things and enjoying those creature comforts or the things that give us a sense of reward or the things we're attached to. But by the end of the week, it's much more fluid. Things are moving much more speedily, and it's all about communication, but with a purpose. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to share more. Welcome Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the week. Now the big takeout for you is that your ruler Mars is very tightly aligned to the point of destiny, the North Node. Now this only visits each of our zodiac signs every 18.6 years. So it's a very unique opportunity to seize the moment. Mars, of course, is about action, but it can, in your sign, be about self-confidence. So if there is something that you're drawn towards, that you really feel instinctively feels right, this combination can give you a lot of encouragement to just go for it and seize the moment. So that's truly exciting. Now, over the last 2.5 years, as I mentioned in the overview, a lot of us have experienced an increase in costs. But with Mercury in your second house, this is giving you an opportunity to pick over the details. But Pluto is still clashing with Mercury at the start of this week. This would be a fine time to do a spreadsheet and really dive deep into the detail of exactly where your future resources are going. But I feel that this could be a week when you do feel that you deserve a treat, and that treat could be right at the start of the week. If you're someone who's been showing a lot of discipline around your diet or your spending, this can be a great moment, to be honest, to give yourself a little bit of a permission to have some fun. It could also be a flutter. You could have a stroke of fortune. With the 2 planets of fortune linking to the Sun at the start of this week in your second house of money, why not? But equally and seriously, if you have been really adhering to quite a strict physical diet, it may be incredibly difficult to actually keep to that as you come into this week. There may be something very Moorish that proves to be irresistible. Or is it someone calling out to you whose sensual nature just seems to be so intriguing? It's entirely possible. And is there some kind of link to someone from your past. Because Neptune is connecting to Venus, Jupiter and the Sun so powerfully, perhaps you are just reminiscing about someone who had such a powerful impact upon you. And that shimmering energy then sees a speeding up, which begins on Tuesday. The Sun punches into Gemini, returning for the first time in 11 months. It links with Pluto, and that link with Pluto can galvanize you. It can galvanize you in terms of trying to express your ideas, Gemini, but also thinking about who you can link with, your network, Pluto, but also you want to say things that are meaningful. Pluto isn't just about the conversation, it's making sure that we're actually invested in what the dialogue is about. But on Thursday, Venus joins up with the Sun, a gorgeous alliance in the flirty Gemini, and you could find yourself wanting to interact with people a lot more. And there could be invitations. It's going to link itself in an exact trine, which is very enabling, with Pluto by Saturday. But later on Thursday, we have a full moon. Full moons is when the Sun and the Moon are in opposition, the two luminaries. So they're not working in a unified way, they're competing in a sense. So the Sun and Venus are really seeing you starting to enjoy a bit of a brighter exchange of ideas and messages with people. What the Moon in Sagittarius is asking you to do, which is the sign of higher philosophies and thinking, it's asking you to make sure that you don't get too caught up in the triviality, which can be part of Gemini energy in its lower energetic exchange. But providing a sentry for the whole process is deep Pluto. It's forging a trine to the Sun and Venus, and also a sextile to the full moon. So in fact, I feel there can be some very important dialogue at this time. Then that's augmented by the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter, moving on Saturday. What a lineup! You are going to find a lot more text messages and emails speeding backwards and forwards. Some of these can be very flirty. There could be an opportunity to get out and mix and mingle. And for sure, if you're someone with key ideas and are very passionate about those ideas, with Pluto in the mix, you can articulate those ideas with a great deal of gravitas, and someone influential could be really taken with what you've got to say. So it's an important, tremendously important week. We see a big shift going from the material, physical, earthy energies of Taurus, but you're driving this whole process because of Mars being so close to the North Node. But as the week goes on, it's going to become absolutely breathless. But what I would say to you, it's going to be hugely enjoyable. So do pitch in, spend as much time as you can with others, exchanging ideas, having fun, and most of all, really taking this opportunity to have some real interludes of sociability. That actually can be so uplifting for you, whether it's with siblings, which rules the third house, neighbours, whoever it may be. You need to be stimulated by lots of quick moving, fast, perhaps even flirty communications, but it needs to be with a purpose through that full moon and the role of Pluto and Jupiter itself, the ruler of Sagittarius, moving into your third house. I hope you have a great week, Aries. Please do subscribe to my channel if you've yet to do so. All the best and goodbye. Welcome Taurus to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. We need to be mindful of your ruler Venus, and Venus is very close to Jupiter, the planet of fortune. But did you know that Venus is also a planet of fortune? It's called the lesser benefit. But it doesn't mean to say that Venus can't be lucky. Venus can be a bit extravagant, but back in your sign, it's been providing some welcome reassurance, particularly in terms of your attractiveness. And at the start of this week, you could be feeling absolutely stunning, and I really hope you will, because the Sun is just preparing to leave your sign, but being so close to Jupiter, this is a very affirming, self-confident combination, because Venus can be very much to do with our appearance, that collective, also linking back to your sector of friendship. Neptune there could mean that somebody that you're friendly with is also proving a very encouraging person, someone who gets you not just in terms of what makes you dazzlingly gorgeous, but also understands you at a spiritual level. It's an energetic exchange that works for you. Just be aware, however, that Mars does continue in your 12th house, and it is very close to the North Node as this week begins. If there is something from your past, or something that hasn't quite been resolved, is still niggling away, at times this could still your peace of mind. Also, Mercury in your sign is clashing with Pluto. If you do need to deal with an important figure this week, such as a boss, someone through some kind of authority or governmental departments, an advisor, you need to make sure that you've got all the detail in that they may require absolutely spot on, or they can scrutinize things in quite an unkind way, and you may feel the dominance of their power and actually feel a little bit oppressed by it. So because there's such a lot of glittering energy there at the start of this week around your self-confidence, I don't necessarily think it's the best week to be exposing yourself to the heavy weather parts of life. So if you can, focus on what you want to do creatively, passionately, that really helps to express your talent, your flair and your magnificence, and leave the interactions with the more formal, traditional types to another time. That's probably a smart thing to do. But as the week goes on Tuesday, the Sun moves from your sign into Gemini, and ironically, the Sun in Gemini has a flavour of your sign because it's your second house. So it's about values, it's about money, but it's about self-worth. But it links in a much more constructive way to Pluto. If there is something you've been working on, it doesn't necessarily have to be just recently. It could have been over the last year. It may have been over the last 5 years or 6 years since Uranus first burst into your sign. But if there is something that means an awful lot to you and you've put so much of yourself into it, you could start to see real signs of material progress. It's just that I wouldn't have an unnecessary conversation this week with someone who you don't know, who could be a little bit negative to what you have to offer. But if there's someone in the know that you have a fluid dialogue with, who's been watching how you've been evolving, or perhaps you're connecting through your public interactions with people, people can start to see there's something about you that's very alluring and very attractive. And that's ramped up on Thursday when Venus, your ruler, moves into Gemini, which of course is a flirty host. But Venus in the second house can bring some kind of financial breakthrough, particularly as it will be angling up to Pluto as well, exactly by Saturday. We have a full moon, however, later on Thursday. If something is out of balance in terms of the ins and outs of your financial situation, you may need to think again. And because Pluto is informing this particular full moon in such a powerful way, some Taurus people may think of changing their job. But I feel if you're someone who's working in your own business or your own interest, that's where you can really flourish. But if you are in an environment where you don't really feel that you can be particularly creative or show your flair, that's when you might start to think, well, however much I'm paid, do I actually get much from this? So your sense of value and appreciation of in the business or environment you work in is just as important as the talent and flair that you're investing too. But Jupiter, the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius, also moves into your second house as this week draws to a close on Saturday. But it's going to be there for the next year. Jupiter is technically debilitated in the sign of Gemini, but I like to challenge these essential dignities. It's going to be there for the next 12 months and more, through to the 9th of June 2025. If you really apply yourself, Jupiter will give you a reward. It's when we take our foot off the proverbial gas and just assume that everything will work out well simply because Jupiter's in the mix, because it can trick us into being somewhat overconfident. But the combination of energy of the Sun, Venus and Jupiter all being in your second house and also angling up to Pluto, the planet of power, in the part of your situation where you can connect with the wider world, could bring some serious progress materially. And I think the full moon is just saying that if you were offered a particular position and it did appeal to you and the financial package is very attractive, just check things out in terms of your personal values. Would you be validated? Would you be appreciated? It's not just about the money, it's also about the creativity, because the creativity that you've been developing with the help of Uranus and the help of Pluto in recent years is not something you're going to want to blunt now. And that's really the message at the start of this week. Stay with what makes you glorious, Taurus. And if you can stay in touch with that, but also be prepared to flex. And of course, the sign of Gemini is a mutable sign. So don't necessarily demand everything on your own terms, but if you can flex a bit, the rewards can come through. But make sure that you don't give your personal skills to a situation that may enrich you financially, but wouldn't in terms of a soul exchange. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Taurus. Have a great week, and if you've yet to do so, please subscribe to my channel. Welcome, Gemini, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the week, which provides some important clues on how things will unfold. Now, there's a big collective of energy in house 12, including your ruler Mercury, which moved into this location last week. The 12th house is quite complex. It can be where we withdraw, retreat, recharge and renew, but it can also be where we culminate. And because you've got the two planets of fortune in house 12, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, but also Jupiter, very much in the mix, it's possible that a lot of hard work you've been putting in, possibly behind the scenes over a long period of time, may be on the cusp of being manifested in a much more outgoing and creative way, which can bring much more recognition to you. But if you have been thinking or enjoying anything to do with personal development, healing, getting out in nature, just taking some moments to just think carefully about what you want, that is all absolutely in keeping with where the planets are. But there is an out here, and that is Mars. Mars continues in its home sign of Aries. It's very thrust in here, but it's close to the position of the North Node. This is known as the point of destiny, and this combination right at the start of this week suggests that wherever you want to invest your passion, and if you're really clear about that future direction, you can do so with an enormous amount of conviction. Now that brings us to Tuesday, because it's really exciting, and what I'm going to go on to share with you now, Gemini, is quite simply sensational. So on Tuesday, the Sun returns to your sign for the first time in 11 months. The Sun moving into Gemini means that your love of communication suddenly gets switched back on. The time of pausing and reflecting is not quite at an end, but it's certainly travelling towards a more outgoing vibe. But the Sun links to Pluto. Pluto in its retrograde in your fellow air sign of Aquarius, very much about transforming your ideas, your knowledge, downloading different ways of thinking and connecting with the world at large. But if you've got individual things that you want to say that are very important to you, this combination is absolutely brilliant and can see some kind of big shift, either externally in your physical circumstances or in terms of how you are communicating and connecting with your inner world. But on Thursday, Venus, the planet of charm, but also of money and relating, joins up in your sign with the Sun, but also links with Pluto. Now that becomes exact on Saturday, but it's going to get the energy of Pluto almost straight away. Venus in your own sign is wonderful to restart your connection to others, and potentially in a romantic context too. If you have gone through a separation recently, or you've been thinking more about someone you used to be involved with recently, perhaps reminiscing, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But Venus moving into your sign is a wonderful opportunity for you to recast your identity through your personal appearance, which Venus governs through its rulership of Libra, presentation in some kind of glamorous, new and dynamic way. And Pluto's pushing you to be open-minded about how you do this. But also, intriguingly, on Thursday, there is a full moon in your opposite sign. This is a challenge in a way because the moon represents the people you're connecting to. And someone may say over the following 2 weeks that you are being too single-minded about focusing on something that's very important to you. But you mustn't be deflected. The Sun and the Moon represent very different principles. The Sun at this time for you is a once-in-a-year opportunity to manifest what makes you completely unique. And that charisma, therefore, can be maximized, particularly because of Pluto's supportive energy. And in the case of Venus, Venus and Pluto across these two signs have not connected for over 220 years. And it means that Pluto applies to the Sun in a trine and the Moon in a sextile, both enabling energies. So you may need to say to someone, look, I hear what you're saying, but this is very, very important for me at this present time. This is something I've been planning, researching, developing for a long period. And this is a crucial time for me to really be single-minded. But then, on Saturday, Jupiter, the planet of growth, the planet of fortune, the planet which is very much to do with optimism, self-belief, self-assurance, returns to your sign for the first time in 12 years. Technically debilitated in Gemini. Why? Jupiter is very much about the energy of Sagittarius in terms of higher principles, philosophies, history. For its rulership of Pisces, very much about faith. In your sign, which is about quick communications, Jupiter in a way is conflicted, but that doesn't mean to say it can't still be very positive for you. Jupiter is going to give you more sense of belief, but because of its angle to Pluto, again, if you're open, just like Venus, first time in over 200 years, if you're open to really transform something about your life in a truly significant way, a massive shift can unfold at this time. So what starts off this week seeming to be quite reflective, potentially very sensitive, maybe more conscious of who's not with you, there is a chance actually to seize the moment in the most dramatic of ways. So whatever you're interested in, whether it is in terms of your personal hobbies, your work, where your flair and creativity shine, if you're someone with a particular gift, this is the time to turn up the dial to absolute max. Do not hold back. And if there is anything to say about that 12th house energy, it's not to doubt yourself. It's to reassure yourself that the cycle that we all go through in that period before our birthday is just this year that much more intense because there's so many more players occupying that space. But that just really can give you a much greater opportunity to release anything that's no longer serving your greater purpose. Move into the moment, occupy it, and really demonstrate to people just how determined, how inspirational, and how exciting your ideas, personality, and desires can be. Have a great week, Gemini. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome Cancer to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. We need to be mindful of the position of the Moon, your ruler, and that's in your 4th house, the sign of Libra, which obviously has an appreciation of equilibrium and balance, but it is in an opposition broadly with Mars. This suggests that anything you're wanting to achieve in terms of your worldly interactions needs to feel right for you, which is an echo of the core values of your sign. But sometimes demands come our way at quite a pace, and Mars is obviously a very energized influence. It's also pretty close to the North Node. So your ambitions can show up this week, and it's possible that you may have to put your own emotional needs or family needs a little bit to one side if you do find yourself caught up in satisfying some demands. Now there's also a collective still in the sign of Taurus, which is an earth sign. It's ruled by Venus, and if you do have any sociable intentions for this week, you could be set fair, or will you? Because as last week came to a close, a fantastic link between the Sun and Jupiter, Jupiter cazimi, meant that that was an ideal time to enjoy a celebration or a gathering. But as this week goes on, Cancer, it is going to become step by step, perhaps potentially a bit more reflective. It begins on Tuesday with the Sun moving into your 12th house, followed on Thursday by Venus, and then on Saturday by Jupiter. But that's all intersected by a full moon which occurs on Thursday, and that's going to occur in the part of your situation to do with life's practicalities, but also your physical well-being. But having the Sun, Venus and ultimately Jupiter all moving into your 12th house, it's a time where really the planets are urging you to take a breath, take a bit of a breather. Now if you have been burning the midnight oil, this week could be perfectly timed for you. But we need to be mindful of the energy of Pluto. Pluto is linking with the Sun in a trine, with Venus in a trine and Jupiter in a trine. It's also interacting with the full moon in a sextile and the position of the Sun in a trine. What does that mean? Pluto's in the part of your chart to do with deep transformation. This transformation could be in terms of a very deep involvement, whether it's emotionally, sexually, financially. Pluto's in a retrograde. It's where we're most invested, the 8th house. And because it is going to be going retrograde in this area through to the start of September, this can be a critical period if something isn't working out for you. So with these air energies developing, the Sun, Venus and Jupiter all moving into the Aries Gemini, which of course is about communication, but the 12th house is where we think and we heal, and can be where we remove ourselves a little bit from something and just give ourselves time to mull things over. So I feel that you're thinking, you're reading, you're learning, and even some discussion, because I feel that you are going to be quite protective about who you will open up to this week. But some discussion can help you to understand that some of the things that you're feeling at the moment, perhaps even affecting your physical welfare or your energy, may be driven by your psychology. And it's possible that past events, past memories, past hurts, or even past celebrations are going to come back into your mind in a much more vivid way. But also the 12th house in traditional astrology is known to be the part of our situations where we need to be mindful of who's not for us. It's known as secret enemies. Now this could, because of the full moon this week, manifest through your work. There may be someone who hasn't got your best interests at heart, but the 12th house is a very shielded area, and people don't necessarily come out and say exactly how they're feeling. So there may be someone you just need to be watchful around in terms of office politics. A person who may be a bit of a schemer, or in some ways is just by faint praise finding an angle to criticize you. So make sure that in terms of your practical performance, everything that you're doing is metronomically efficient. But that doesn't change the fact that you do have Mars in that very dominant part of your situation. And if you do feel that you want to have a little bit of space, even from loved ones, get into nature, have some walks, perhaps go and have a spa day, or have a treatment of some kind, all of that would be perfectly timed, because after what has been an extremely exciting and interactive time, I just do feel that you need something of a pause. But if a romantic relationship hasn't been going very well, Venus moving into the 12th house really does give you food for thought. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll decide to finish it, but it just means that you're going to be analysing the benefits of that situation or not very deeply over the next few weeks. I hope you have a great week, Cancer. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you've yet to sub, please support the channel and do so now. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. And you can see your ruler, which is always the critical thing, is just preparing to move into the sign of Gemini. That occurs on Tuesday. But you can see it's just moved over Jupiter. Late last week, you had an opportunity to showcase your talents to someone influential. It may have been through an informal conversation. You may have got just chatting to someone in a bar, and the impression you made was very, very strong. It could have been in a romantic context, but I think most likely it's in a worldly one. So whatever you want to manifest in terms of your career and ambitions, as you come into this week, some very big and important developments may be breaking. Now also Mars, the planet of passion, is in a very tight alliance with the North Node as this week begins. If you need to open up your world in some ways, the instinctive energy of the North Node, which is guiding us all of the time collectively, could just see you right on the money, particularly as Mars is very much about having the confidence to take the action to change something quickly. Now, you know last week that Mercury moved into your 10th house, great for any kind of training or reskilling or talking or reaching out to anyone influential, but it did square up with Pluto. And that means that as you start this week, there could still be a little bit of tension in a close alliance if they're not quite as engaged or convinced about what you want to do. But your personality power is absolutely massive as you come into this week, Leo, and that is going to reverberate out through the week. But the way you deliver it will be slightly different, because by Tuesday, the Sun moving into the air sign of Gemini for you is your sector of friendship. It's also your future hopes, but it links very powerfully to Pluto. So whereas last week Mercury and Pluto clashed, this week the Sun and Pluto forge an amazing alliance. Pluto's about transformation. Your links to others can be extremely potent. But also on Thursday, Venus, the planet of charm, but also of relating, joins up with the Sun and also starts to link to Pluto. It becomes exact on Saturday, but it's the first time it's happened for over 220 years across these two signs. Also on Thursday, we have a full moon. Full moons can often bring something to the surface that's awkward, that's not quite in alignment, because the Sun and the Moon are actually competing. But this is one of the most potentially providential full moons that I can recall for some time. Again, Pluto's informing it in a very constructive way. Pluto in your sector of relating, and then Jupiter itself, the ruler of Sagittarius, joins up with the Sun and Venus in Gemini for the first time in 12 years, and again links to Pluto. That does become exact on the 3rd of June, a day when Mercury also moves into Gemini too. So over the next 10 days, something that you've been building up in terms of your determination, your picture of how you're going to manifest a talent that's important to you, a product, a service. It doesn't matter whether you work for someone else as long as you're really engaged and motivated, or if it's something for you. But if you are very creative and demonstrative type of Leo and enjoy performance of any kind, for sure that can gain recognition as much as working extremely hard in your professional situation as well. But all this 11th house energy that comes in is very much about rising above sheer ambition. It's more about your ability to connect to people through ideas. Gemini, an air sign, Pluto in Aquarius, an air sign, and forge really important alliances. It doesn't have to be about romance. It could be with Venus in the mix, but essentially it's about the big picture, and it's about a real sense of excitement. And the momentum that you're developing at this time can be absolutely sensational. Is there a caveat? Well, I think it's just about that part of your nature that can be a little bit cautious about starting anything new, or sticking with what you know best is very comforting. But you're really being asked to go for it, to take a giant step forwards, because you are the master of your destiny. And if you really believe that, you can make a sensational difference to your situation. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Leo. Hope you have a great week. And remember, if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now and help to support. It's great. Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week. Big collective in your sister Earth sign of Taurus. And that's sensational because at the very end of last week, the Sun and Jupiter unified with the Jupiter Cazimi. That's very much about being more entrepreneurial, more risk-taking, and with Jupiter being very much about growth and higher education and travel. Any of those areas can really be enriched at this time. But also your ruler Mercury, if you recall, moved last week and clashed with Pluto. There may have been some tension around the middle of the week, therefore, if your desire to maintain your more regulated way of living your life has been clashing with another instinct that wants to be a bit freer and a bit more spontaneous. Or is it somebody who's pointing out to you that you're not quite seizing the moment because perhaps it's easier to stay with what you know? So as you're coming into this week, there's a lot of momentum to change things up. But how is it going to change? And what's the direction of travel? You get a clue from Mars in house 8. That's very much to do with desire. It's right close to the North Node. And the 8th house is very, very instinctively where we're most invested. But of course, Mars in the 8th house is very scorpionic. Is there somebody who's really making your pulse race in terms of a romantic dimension? It could be that it's someone completely different to you who doesn't even live in your locality or comes from a very different cultural background. Be as open-minded as possible. Then again, if you've got just really different ideas and it's your work where you really want to make an impact, Mars could be about money. So on Tuesday, the Sun moves into Gemini. This is an air sign. It's about communication. It's ruled by the same ruler as you, Mercury. But Mercury here is about those quick exchanges of ideas. But it's your 10th house. This is your sector of success. And the Sun immediately links to Pluto. So whereas last week Pluto was in a fight with your ruler, rather a brittle one, now it's very enabling. If you're prepared to relax a little bit and explore your options, something can start to shape up for you that's tremendously exciting. The Sun supported on Thursday by the glamorous energies of Venus. But Venus in the 10th house suggests that charm will get you everywhere. So your personality power is going to be important in terms of your ambitions. In a romantic context, it could be that if a relationship's going well, you want to make that next step up towards a greater commitment, perhaps by moving in together, getting your own property and so forth. For some people, even formalising it through marriage. But also, it links to Pluto in a very constructive way. We have a full moon which occurs on Thursday in the sign of Sagittarius. Now here, you're being asked to be very open-minded about your emotional situation, but it's possible that your thrust for some kind of ambition or goal needs to just be modulated against how this will play out in terms of your home life. Doesn't mean to say you shouldn't go for and push yourself forwards, but on Saturday it's Jupiter that plays catch up with the Sun and Venus, and again links with Pluto. When you get the Sun linking with Pluto, you get a deep change within us, a deep transformation, or our external circumstances can change. With Venus, it's a much deeper appreciation of our financial but also our romantic connections. With Jupiter, Jupiter works in lots of different ways, but it's certainly about expansion, self-confidence. It's back here for the first time in 12 years. Over the next 12 months, you have a great chance to transform how people view you. If you want to raise your profile, whether it's through an interest, a hobby, your professional skills, it doesn't really matter. You can enlarge people's understanding of what you have to offer. And because Pluto's in the mix, that's giving you a lot of desire to evolve something that may have been a little bit stuck. So if you are someone who wants to make a big impact, doesn't matter where, the choice is yours. The planetary pushing and nudging you've had recently to be more experimental and to be more explorative and perhaps even more adventurous, the way this actually manifests itself could be around a change of work, of life role, of how you can connect in your local community, of taking on more responsibilities and obligations, or using your life experience and skills and knowledge to guide others in some kind of powerful and potent way. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Virgo. I hope you have a great week. And if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now to help it grow. Welcome, Libra, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week, and we can see the Moon is in your sign, but it is in an opposition with Mars. This can be quite a feisty combination. It can see our moods be a bit up and down. The Moon in your own sign gives you a greater desire to be in touch with what you need, which is actually a really good thing, I feel, for a Libran. But Mars is very close to the North Node on the other side of your chart. So if there is something going on around a relationship or someone you're interested in, this combination can actually embolden you to take the lead and go for it. Because the North Node is very much about our pull. It's the point of destiny. Mars is going to give you a much greater inclination to really act on impulse. Again, not a bad thing. But we can also see there's a pack of energy, including your ruler Venus in your 8th house. Very much to do with intimacy, can be to do with intimacy of a more sexual kind, certainly to do with where we're most invested. If there is a relationship therefore that's going along well and you're wanting to get closer, share more things, and basically devote yourself more to that person, this is a sparkling set of influences. Now, there may have been a little bit of a tender point last week when Mercury moved into the 8th house, clashed with Pluto, and there could still be some reverberations going on around that. So if your situation is not progressive around a relationship, in fact, it could be seeing you reflect on what you want to do about a relationship, that angle between Pluto and Mercury is still giving you food for thought. Pluto in your 5th house is very much where you need to manifest your individuality. It's your sunshine part of your chart. Whereas Mercury in the 8th house can be about shared resources. Could also be a sense that you're not getting the recognition or the financial rewards for demonstrating your talents. But do keep the faith, because as last week came to a close, a sensational link between Jupiter and the Sun may have seen something developing. It may have been an exchange of information, which Jupiter can be about. It may be an idea that you've got that someone's becoming more conscious of. And as we come into this week, things are set to open up in a potentially sensational way. Now, as you know, I don't use these kind of words lightly. I tend to be very cautious because I don't like the concept of basically building people up that this is going to be an amazing week, amazing month, and then it doesn't turn out that way, because we all know that life can be quite tough and it's not always a straight line. But on Tuesday, the Sun moves into your air sign triplicity, your shared air sign triplicity of Gemini. So here, life's speeding up after the introspection of the 8th house and the transformational period that you've been going through. Now, if there's something that hasn't worked for you, you're going to want to break free. But the same could be true if something has worked for you, you want to explore together. It just depends on your unique circumstances, but certainly travel is going to call out to you in a big way. Also, your ruler Venus moves to join with the Sun on Thursday. It is going to link to Pluto on Saturday. The Sun does that on Tuesday, and then we have a full moon. It's a full moon, which is in a way a flip of what it is for everyone else, because the full moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, which is about big thinking, big ideas and philosophies, but for you it's 3rd house, very Gemini. On the other side of the heavens, the Sun in Gemini is in the 9th house, very Sagittarian. But the key is that Pluto in Aquarius is linking very constructively to both the position of the Sun and the Moon. Then on Saturday, Jupiter joins up with the Sun, Venus, and also the energies of that full moon, and moves into the sign of Gemini too. Now, Jupiter going into your 9th house, again, is a paradox, because Jupiter is technically debilitated in Gemini, but for you, the 9th house gives it that very Sagittarius feel. So widening your horizons, which in itself, very Sagittarian, being open to new experiences, livening things up, being more spontaneous, basically being more carefree. It's time to set your heart, your desires, your interests, your basic qualities free, and there is a fantastic chance that you can achieve it. But there has been an awful lot of intensity of late. It doesn't mean it's all been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but now if you're wanting to do something more off the cuff, create more variety, book that travel plan, or actually get on the move, book that course of higher education. If you're wanting to do something that's really dramatically different, you're getting an enormous amount of support as this week draws to a close. And at the heart of it is the transformational energy of Pluto, which is linking to Venus and Jupiter for the first time across these air signs for over 220 years. So in recent years, Libra, as you well know, it hasn't been easy, but this is a chance now to really seize control and really get back on the front foot in an incredibly dynamic way. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it grow. Take care and goodbye. Welcome, Scorpio, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week, which provides some important pointers, not least the position of the Moon. That's tucked up in house 12. That can give us a desire to be a little bit more protective, even withdraw a little bit, but it is in an opposition with Mars, your traditional ruler. Now, Mars is very close to the North Node, and that combination suggests if you're clear on the physical things you want to achieve this week, you could be quite busily cracking on with them before too long. But what about the Moon? Well, if there is some concerns or anxieties or a little bit of a dip in your emotional energy, that could in some ways just take the edge off that passion that Mars can give you. But what I would say is you could get some encouragement from someone else as this week begins. Because last week, if you recall, Mercury moved into your 7th house, which is a great location for it to be, but it did clash with your modern ruler. There may have been a tense conversation. It may have felt that someone was only prepared to talk about how they saw a situation rather than listening to how you felt, which could have been really frustrating, particularly as at the moment with Venus and Jupiter in your 7th house, you're probably more than happy to be a little bit more availing to the other person's take. And as this week begins, Mercury is still in touch in that square, so there may be something that you just need to be mindful of maintaining your boundaries around, because there are times when we can be too much of a people pleaser for sure. But the great thing was that when last week came to a close, there was a Jupiter cazimi. Now, because Jupiter has been in Taurus for a year and it's coming to the end of its journey in Jupiter, this year the cazimi happens at the end of its time in your opposite sign. But this still can give you an interesting uplift when it comes to your connections or collaborations with other people or one person in particular over the next 12 months. But just who? And that's what this week's story as we go forwards is really going to ask you to explore, because the Sun moves on Tuesday into your 8th house, followed by Venus on Thursday, followed by Jupiter on Saturday. The 8th house, ironically, has a flavour of the energies and archetype of your sign. It's very much about a deep discovery. It's not necessarily what we see more superficially. It's how things feel. It can be very much to do with transformations. Sometimes things can come to a close in life, as we all know, but those endings can be followed by new beginnings. But then some things that are going well can just get deeper and more devoted and more committed, and it just depends on where you are in that whole process. So it could be around a business situation that a partnership can go from strength to strength with this week's energies. It could be something that is connected to someone that you're pretty close to. It may even be a family member, or it could be a service that you're offering that is a domestic product or is helping people in your local community. But as the week goes on, the opposite can be true. If you're feeling that something has run its course, you may be thinking that you want to leave it. But there can also be developments around physical property. If you're renovating, redecorating, or you're wanting to raise funding, if you're wanting to remortgage, or perhaps you're wanting to get the money together for a more entrepreneurial project, your ability to connect well and skillfully with others is all going to be really important to that. But this is where your modern ruler is so influential this week, because the full moon that occurs on Thursday is all about balancing the ins and outs of your budget. And because you're wanting to perhaps really get your longer term financial situation working properly, it needs to feel right for you emotionally. And that part of you that's so perceptive, sometimes you don't even need to have a conversation to know exactly how things are lined up. And I think there could be a flavour of that this week. So whether you're in, it's getting deeper, better, closer, perhaps even more sensual in a romantic context, or you're getting to the point where you're wanting to release yourself from a situation that isn't working, or you're developing something practical around a property or a business, or you're wanting to be much more flexible and creative around long-term resources. There's a lot of potential this week. It can be for growth, it could be for some endings, but it definitely is going to see a transformation at some very powerful level for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Scorpio. Have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week, which gives us some very important information of how the week will begin. We need to be mindful of your ruler Jupiter. At the end of last week, we had a Jupiter cazimi. This only happens once a year. The interesting thing is this year it's happening as Jupiter comes to the end of its journey through the sign of Taurus. but it's an opportunity to really think around your health, your diet, your life structure and your work, that something can evolve over the next year which could prove to be extremely positive for you. But that sixth house also has Mercury recently arrived in it. Mercury in the sixth house can be a bit brittle, a bit tense. And if you recall, when it moved into Taurus last Wednesday, it immediately went into a right angle with Pluto, which peaked on Friday. If you have felt there's been a little bit of brittleness, or perhaps you felt a little bit on edge, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But let's also look at the position of Mars in your sister fire sign of Aries. Here, alongside the point of destiny, the North Node, if there's something you're passionate about this week, you can use those sixth house energies, which are to do with practicalities in Taurus, including Mercury, to get things working, to actually give you some kind of tangible return. That's good. It's just the moon in Libra starts the week in an opposition with Mars. So your emotions could be a little bit up and down. You could feel a little bit grumpy if you feel thwarted. But I want to reassure you that we've got a sensational set of influences that start to unfold from Tuesday. That's when the Sun moves into your opposite sign, but it links to the position of Pluto, the planet of transformation. A conversation you have this week could prove to be life-changing. Now, I know that sounds rather dramatic, but it is actually possible. Now, this particular aspect did happen last year, but on Thursday, Venus joins up with the Sun in Gemini and also aligns with Pluto exactly by Saturday, followed on Saturday by your ruler Jupiter moving into the sign of Gemini. Technically debilitated in that sign, but we need to see the part of your situation that Jupiter's going to influence. So the Sun, Venus and Jupiter are all being activated by the potent energy, the transformational energy of Pluto for the first time in the case of Venus and Jupiter for over 220 years across these zodiac signs. And of course, Gemini is an air sign, communication, and Aquarius, very much communication. But Aquarius is about our higher ideals. Gemini can be very quick, fast, nimble communication, can also be quite flirty. But the seventh house is where we connect to people. If we stay totally in our own energy, the first house, then that would make us have a little bit of a limited experience. So it's where we connect that we can get rewards. We can also experience disappointments as well. But what I would say is your words, your thinking, your ideas, even your belief systems can have a tremendous impact on people that you interact with, not just this week, but for many moons to come. And that's because there is also a full moon in your sign on Thursday. But this is influenced by the position of Pluto too. The seventh house can be where we build relationships, alliances, collaboration, cooperation, work on our listening skills. It's very interactive. It can be where we need to compete, set our boundaries. In traditional astrology, it's known as the part of open enemies. But in open enemies, it's the kind of people that we know, like competitors, or perhaps people aren't necessarily our greatest admirers in our locality. People like that, open enemies, but we can still interact and we can still find some kind of way of working with people like that. So all of this is just dripping with potential in the most glorious of ways, because your sign, ruled by Jupiter, is about growth. Jupiter is about optimism, it's about possibilities, it's about good fortune. And some amazing fortune can unfold for you over the next 12 months in a link with another person. Could be romantic, could be business, friendship, social, it could be with a colleague, it could be with an employer, but some kind of serendipity is almost guaranteed to unfold for you over the next year. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Sagittarius. Have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now. Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the week. Now, ordinarily I'd focus on the ruling planet. Saturn continues like last week in your sector of everyday communication, and it's not having a major implication on any other planetary player. However, you can see that you do have a lot of energy in house 5, which is Taurus. The thing that Taurus and you share is the earth element. But house 5 is where you showcase your sunshine. Mercury moved into that area last week. Mercury is how we think, speak, can be very much to do with our sense of humour. And moving into the 5th house is where we can be more playful. It was immediately affected or afflicted by Pluto in your sector of everyday money and your values. If you had a bit of a disagreement last week about a financial matter, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. Or perhaps you felt a bit conflicted about something you wanted to take a punt on, but weren't completely sure. Because the 5th house can be the sector of risk and speculation. But having Jupiter and Venus in that area as you begin this week can give you a sense that your enterprise, but also your personality, linked together can bring something really enriching to you over this week. And you can be right, because as last week drew to a close, the Sun applied to Jupiter and we had a Jupiter cazimi. But only as Jupiter is coming to the end of its journey through Taurus has this happened. So over the next year, if there has been something you've been developing that you're really inspired or enthusiastic about, maybe it is something very creative, the chance to bring it to life is certainly there. But do you know, to actually do so, the best way to really have that success is to make it work in a practical way. And that is something you have a real appreciation for. The reason for that is you're an earth sign. And earth signs get that you can have something that looks good on paper or is very imaginative or inspirational, but it still needs to have a practical benefit. So as this week develops, the Sun, Venus and Jupiter all move into your 6th house. The 6th house is very Virgoian. It is about the details. It is about being consistent. It is about providing a service. It is about marginal gains, chipping away, something that you have such a real gift for. But you know what's going to help you this week is that in your 4th house of emotion, Mars is very close to the point of destiny. And if there is something that you instinctively want to go forwards with, just in your emotional drive, I feel you're going to have a lot of dynamism, which can be really helpful. So your sparkle and ability to light up situations with the strength of your personality is extremely strong. But as this week goes on, you need to take whatever it is that you're really enthused by or invested in and start to actually make it work. It's the classic form and function. And that's something, that patience, that ability to just keep working away at something for the long term is something that can be rewarded. Now, because Jupiter is the planet of fortune, it may be around a job that you're going to bring a new, fresh approach to. Your dazzling ideas are your currency, but whoever you speak to will want to know how the application to them gives them some kind of benefit. It's not just the idea alone. And that's really the clue for how this week will develop. But there is a full moon. It's in your 12th house. You could find yourself having a stab of self-doubt, interestingly, because Sagittarius is ruled by the planet of confidence, Jupiter, and that can happen on Thursday. But it may be because someone will scrutinize whatever you're offering, and maybe they will see some angles that you hadn't thought of. But don't be downcast about this. Keep the faith, because what's going to happen, Capricorn, is all the lessons you learned with Pluto going through your sign from 2008 to January the 21st this year, they can come back to you but from the very start of September. So this interim period, while Pluto's going backwards in your second house, you may have to stand up for whatever you're promoting or whatever you're interested in. And you could find that other people won't necessarily immediately adopt whatever it is that you think is so very, very good. But if you stand it up, you stay determined and keep evolving and keep refining and improving whatever it is that you're really excited about, you're going to find by the end of this week, actually, a big shift is occurring. You're seeing a big shift. It could see you move to another job. It could see you adopt a new health regime. It could see a big change around your diet. It may see your core values actually alter quite a bit. So your whole relationship to life can become earthier, more grounded, but also it needs to be playful, and that's really the energy that's coming from Taurus at the very start of the week. So it's form and function are the two metaphors for this week. You can do it. You have got a talent for management, for patience, for marshalling resources very astutely. You just need to bring a bit more self-confidence to the way you manifest those talents, but then use all those core skills you've got in a way to really push forwards. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now is the event chart, which can guide us with some important pointers at the start of the week. Not least, we need to look at the planet which is most visible, and it's the Moon. And the Moon in Libra is looking for fairness and balance, but also in the 9th house, it's a truth seeker. But it's in an opposition with Mars, which is in an intense conjunction with the point of destiny, the North Node, very much to do with our instincts. Your ideas are something you're going to need to express this week, but you're going to want to do it in a quick, urgent way. If you meet resistance, that could lead to frustration. I'm just making you aware of that. But also, we've had a big collective of energy developing in your 4th house, very much to do with home, family, emotion. Because Uranus has been such a disruptive energy over the last few years in this part of your situation, the fact that Mercury arrived to join up with the other players here last week suggests that maybe something really needs to be concluded. It could be that you're moving home, adapting where you live, redecorating, perhaps buying some furnishings, working on your garden. It's possible you could be renting out a place or looking to lease somewhere yourself. There may be some news around your family. There could be a gathering or a reunion. All of those things are possible as we come into this new week. But Mercury clashed when it moved last Wednesday with Pluto. That became exact last Friday. Maybe there's something that you feel quite strongly about in terms of your individuality that you've had to just bend a little bit around in terms of the actual circumstances you have. Maybe they're not absolutely ideal, or maybe someone close to you sees something in a different way. But what I love about all that energy in Taurus, particularly having Venus and Jupiter there, is that after the struggles and the disruption that Uranus may have created, this is a chance to find a greater sense of peace, equilibrium and comfort. And also, as last week drew to a close, there was a Jupiter Cazimi. Now this happens only once a year, and of course Jupiter moves through each of the 12 zodiac signs usually once a year. We had a bit of a change to that pattern in recent years, with going through 2 signs twice in 2 years, but Jupiter's back in that 1 sign a year pattern. But when it moved into Taurus on the 13th of May last year, the Sun was long down the road in the sign of Taurus. So we're getting the Jupiter return in Taurus late. So it's possible that even if something hasn't quite fallen into place around a property matter or where you're living, it will do so over the next 12 months. So do keep the faith, and remember Jupiter is about faith through its rulership of Pisces, and have confidence, its rulership of Sagittarius, that that can still yet come to pass. So that gives us the background at the start of this week. But then, wow, things really speed up. The Sun, Tuesday to Gemini. Venus to Gemini Thursday. Jupiter to Gemini on Saturday. But what's really powerful about those transitions is they all link with Pluto in the first degree of Aquarius. That Aquarius energy is under review because of the retrograde, and obviously when Pluto inverts back into Capricorn at the start of September, we do have that final interlude of Pluto making its way through Capricorn to the 20th of November, the last time in our lifetimes. But big Aquarius energy is coming. And the thing with Jupiter, because it is so cyclical itself once every 12 years, and Venus doesn't go round the heavens in a regulated way, in the way that the moon or the sun does, we've got two very rare alliances to Pluto this week. Venus and Jupiter linked to Pluto for the first time in 220 years in these two zodiac signs. And think about the host. Pluto is in an air sign, but a sign that's very much to do with progression, but also tradition. There's a duality to Aquarius, but in the early part of the sign of Aquarius, it's in the first duord, or the first 2.5 degrees, the 12th harmonic. The energy of Uranus, of progression, is definitely amped up. But the Sun in the 5th house, in the quick moving communicative sign of Gemini, is about play, but it's also the sunshine part of your particular journey of the sun through the sky. So what I mean by that is the 5th house is very Leonian. So the host may be about communication, quick wits, being very funny, Gemini, sociable, mixing and mingling, but the 5th house is where you showcase what makes you really, really sparkle. Think of the radiance of the sun. It is known as the luminary. It lights us up. It is our life force. This is your life force week, with the Sun, Venus and Jupiter all merging into that 5th house sector. But the key is Venus and Jupiter are your planets of fortune. The 5th house can be where we speculate. It's a bit more to do with risk taking. It's the sector of chance, or chance as they would say, bon chance in France. So this is a wonderful opportunity to bring a spark of willpower, Pluto, of being open to the evolution of your life, Pluto, of Jupiter growth, of Venus, how you showcase your attractiveness and personality. If you decide to give yourself some kind of magnificent makeover, get some new clothes, dazzle people with your warmth, this is the week to do it. But what about that full moon? Well, it's a full moon, to be honest, that I think has a lot for it. Full moons are challenging because the moon and the sun are not unified like they are in a new moon, where they're working collaboratively. They're competing. And of course, they've got very different energies. The sun is about where we're directing our action energies. The moon's where we want to protect. It's more reflective and receptive. But both are impacted by Pluto in a very constructive way. The sun a trine and the moon a sextile. So two very helpful planetary alignments. So what I would say is that the 5th house is what you need to do for you, the individual. The 11th house, where the moon is, ironically, is very much a flavour of what you are as an Aquarius. Someone who has a great appreciation of friendships, the big picture, can be the humanitarian. So you're going to need to juggle really a little bit, because more than one person may decide that they do want a piece of you, and you're going to have to decide who is the right person for you. But something enormously dynamic can unfold this week, particularly if you've done the hard yards in advance. And of course, Saturn's been testing out the whole process over the last year in terms of our self-worth, in terms of finances, in terms of our values. So if that hard work has gone in, a lot of application, a lot of dedication, been trying to get that home or emotional life just as you want it, and it's been a little bit of a fight, There is the chance over the next year to really see that fall into place. But on the tails, the coattails of that, hurtling in, is this chance to absolutely light up people. And one of the ways that you light up people when you're on form is when you have the confidence to be truly yourself. Because, especially if you're an early born Aquarian, that Saturnian energy can cramp you. It can inhibit you from really embracing that more zany and quirky vibe that Uranus can create. If you're in the second decan, you're often a brilliant communicator. If you're in the third decan, you're often very charming and can avoid some of the more feisty interactions that early born Aquarius people always seem to find themselves in. But whatever type of Aquarian you are, this is a golden moment, not just this year, but this lifetime. It's that powerful. So whatever you want to manifest that's important to you, whether it's a child, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to give yourself an incredible makeover, whether you want to set your intentions to meet the love of your life, whether you actually want to go from being a flirty, fun relationship to something that's more solid, whatever you want that combines your emotion with your heart's desire, that's what this week is about, Aries. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please support it and do so now. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 20th of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now is the event chart right at the start of the week, and this gives us a lot of important information. Not least, your two ruling planets of traditional Jupiter and Neptune are collaborating still. They were brilliantly as last week came to a close. Now Jupiter is about growth and through its rulership of your sign, faith, and Neptune's about dreams, but it can be about compassion. But for you, Jupiter may be, as this week begins, in the sign of Taurus, but it's actually been here for just over 1 year. And as last week drew to a close, the brilliance of the sun, the radiance of the sun applied itself to Jupiter, so we had a cazimi. But that's only happened once, because when Jupiter moved into Taurus a year ago on the 13th of May, the sun had already passed that point. So this connection suggests over the next year that your ideas or your mode of expression, however you choose, it could be through music, self-expression, it could be through art, it could be as a writer, it could be through the physical things you do, your imagination and sensitivity, but also ability to draw energy in a more sensory way. Neptune can be extremely influential in how people relate to you. So in other words, you still have the power of Jupiter for 1 more year in your sector of everyday communications. Further, Mercury, the planet which governs the 3rd house, moved into that area last Wednesday. Now, as you know, it did clash with Pluto. It's possible that from then through to the end of the week, maybe Saturday, that something came up from your past, maybe in your own thinking. Maybe it was a very deeply rooted old historical issue that had some pain linked to it. Or maybe someone made an observation about how you interact, which actually was a little jarring. Maybe they raised a grievance that you weren't expecting. But what you can do, because of the emollient energies of Venus in its home sign of Taurus, which is so close to Jupiter and the Sun, is accept this has happened, but be determined to take this wonderful opportunity to think and to grow in terms of your personal expression into the next stage of the year's development, because it is going to be an incredibly powerful week. But also, as you begin this week, Mars and the point of destiny are in a tight conjunction in your 2nd house. If you're more engaged on a financial issue that you're needing to talk about, you could feel a bit feisty, particularly because Mars is in an opposition with the Moon. If you're talking about shared finances, or you're talking to a lender or a source of finance, if someone doesn't quite get where you're coming from, you could feel quite impatient. Just bear that in mind. But charm really will win the day, to be honest. But then on Tuesday, the sun switches into house 4. Very much to do with our environment, where we live, how we live there. But also the 4th house is our connection to our inner world. It's our inner safety and stability and security. And the sun immediately links with Pluto. Now, if you recall, Pluto forged that discordant right angle with Mercury. But here, Pluto can be of great benefit to you because it's pushing you, and it will push you when it comes back into Aquarius from the 20th of November, once it leaves to retreat back into Capricorn for one final time at the start of September. It's going to push you over the next few years through to 2044 to really grow your understanding of the psychological domain. But that's interesting because Pisces people usually have an incredible capacity for that area. You do as a giver. You know, your capacity to help people who are less fortunate in a very selfless way is the stuff of astrological legend. But I feel that Pluto, because it's in Aquarius, will bring a more detached understanding of your own emotional dimension, your own inner world. That's the area that's really going to grow. And this connection to the sun, which occurs immediately this week on Tuesday through to the end of the week, then as Venus moves on Thursday, and then as Jupiter Urula moves on Saturday, all of these can be triggers for huge growth because it's the start really of a completely new era for you. Now there is a full moon which occurs on Thursday in Sagittarius, but that's actually very much supported by Pluto. And even again, if your feelings are quite close to the surface about some quite personal issues, there may be something that actually comes to pass which really pleases you, to do with the home or to do with the family or to do with your inner evolution. And it can be very powerful. I feel that full moons sometimes are romanticized. You know, you get people who share memes, particularly on Facebook, and essentially they say the same thing for whatever, whether it's a new moon or a full moon. New moon, okay, set your intentions. Full moon, you're going to receive all. But actually, the moon and the sun are in conflict on a full moon. So often full moons can be very challenging. That's when we have the most amount of road accidents, or when we have the most amount of admissions to hospitals, or when people you know, violent crime tends to increase at the time of a full moon. So full moons aren't necessarily very easy, but I feel this full moon will work for you splendidly if you're up for it. Because what's really shifting here, Pisces, is because you're a very emotional, watery sign, sometimes to protect yourself, you almost like embrace the power of your opposite sign of Virgo and cold out. I've used this analogy before. You're almost like the trout at the bottom of the lovely crisp pool, say somewhere in the countryside, with your eye looking at the fisherman who's trying to get you out of the water, but you're far too crafty because you're staying just out of sight or depth, but you're observing coolly, detachedly. So I think there is a little bit of a dichotomy in your nature. I think you can be all in to the nth degree, but you can also be all out. And I feel that what this new phase is asking you to do is to use all the extra communication that's been going on recently to start now working on evolving your emotional world in a more communicative way through the host Gemini, which of course is about quick communications. Let's be honest about it, the moon, particularly in Gemini, is a bit cool itself. It's a mutable sign like yours, but you have the emotion. Gemini doesn't, it has the air. But I think the air can be good for you. It can help you to think about where you live, how you live there, who with, your emotional interactions, and in a way that can really grow and evolve quite considerably. Now, if you're quite settled in your life, I think Venus and Jupiter suggest you could start working from home if you're not already doing it, or starting a business afresh from the comfort of your abode, or relocating, downsizing, upsizing. You may have someone coming home, leaving home. There may also be some redecoration or some changes to your garden space at this time, because what you can do with all these magnificent energies this week is really start to manifest a hub that works for you, that gives you a real sense of peace and tranquility. But the conversations and the ideas that have been generated recently, maybe even some of the ones that have been a bit challenging, and now you can convert all of that into a pause and take a breath. But there can be something that really evolves in this arena. Maybe, for example, even getting closer to someone else. If you're older and you think that relating or a relationship is not really what you want now, you prefer to have, you know, the control of your life, your agency, which is totally understandable. What Venus and Jupiter can do is to try and melt some of your resistance to why you want to be very protected. So there could be some lessons to learn about your emotional outlook, your emotional reactions and interactions, and Pluto is going to be a massive part of helping you to learn much more deeply what really makes you tick. It's been a pleasure being with you, Pisces. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now.